Hello, my name is Piper, and for my therapeutic craft and other mediums project, I chose crocheting, specifically crocheting 4 projects, each one with an increased difficulty. I chose this project because I like to learn new crafts and things to make. That's one of my passions. And then I also chose crocheting because my stepmom does a lot of crocheting. She makes blankets, baby blankets specifically. She's made stuffed animals and hats. And I wanted to do a hobby that we could both bond over. Um, and then she did crochet me a blanket for my graduation in high school. And I would love to be as good as she is and be able to make a blanket like that. And then also try to give them to people and make their lives better. But we even were texting the other day about I'm going up there next week and we're gonna do some yarn swapping. So some objects used for tools, crochet hooks, scissors, a yarn needle, and then supplies. I use 2 spools of yarn, and then I utilize digital patterns. I specifically got them from TikTok so I could watch people use them as well. And then equipment, a project bag to carry on around the yarn, projects, needles, all the tools and supplies basically. And then standard ceiling light or sunlight was used. And then the space I used was on my lap, and then like the arm of the couch, like I'd prop my arm on the arm of the couch, so probably about like a 3 by 3 foot space. This was the space I used, was on the couch, and then so I could use the arm of the couch to support my arm while crocheting. And then next to my space was 3 large windows, and the blinds were usually open to give natural lighting. And then when it got dark, I utilized the overhead lighting. And then I like to have background noise, either music or a show that I've previously watched. So I didn't need to feel like I was had to pay attention, but it was still noise. And then these did support my performance by reducing eye strain, and then as well as creating a relaxing environment that kept me focused with the music. Social and cultural demands. My stepmom, Samantha, she was always there to answer questions for me regarding patterns or materials or any just weird questions I had about crocheting. And then I listed the TikTok users that I used to watch like the patterns and a step-by-step walkthrough of them actually making the item. And then the meaning for me, my stepmom has been in my life for the last 7 years, and I would watch her make the blankets, the baby blankets, animals, and hats, and just anything else she would make. And she usually gives her projects to others, which would make their day. And I always wanted to learn how to crochet so I could bring that same joy to other people, um, like she has to me, and then a lot of other people as well. Sequencing and timing. So first 4 steps, I would watch the TikTok video to see the walkthrough of the pattern and watch them make it. And then I would grab my yarn and find the end of the yarn. I'd make a slip knot, and then you start. Most of my projects started by making a chain of 4. Excuse me. For performance patterns, routine, there is a set routine while crocheting. It's usually like the same steps over and over. Like for the hat I made, it was just rows and rows of the same stitch over and over. It's very, routine based, a routine based hobby. And then setting time aside to work on projects. I would usually find myself working on projects in the evening to help unwind from the day. And then role, I value being a creative individual as well as a gift giver. And that kind of, goes along with making handmade gifts for my family, which is something that we all typically do. We all, find the joy and just, the meaning behind like handmade gifts. And then habit, always ending on the end of a row so it's easy to pick back up, versus stopping in the middle of a row or middle of a project, and it would be harder to figure out where I'm going next. And then always checking my tension to make sure my stitches are even. Client factors, I use the structures of my hands, the bones, joints, muscles. I use the structure to help grip and control the crochet hook, manipulate yarn, and perform repetitive fine motor movements. Structures related to the eyes, I relied on visual structures to monitor stitch accuracy and then read or watch patterns. Clear visual input help guide my motor performance. And then also used Fine motor coordination is required for precise manipulation of the crochet hook and yarn that help control my finger movements for accurate stitch formation. And then visual perception was needed to interpret visual inputs such as instructions, yarn placement, and stitch size to guide hand movements accurately. Performance skills manipulated the crochet hook and yarn precisely to form consistent stitches and maintain appropriate tension. Sequences the steps of the crochet pattern in the correct order to ensure accurate progression of the task, and then sustained attention throughout the activity to prevent errors and complete the task successfully. So grading and adapting down, one way to make a task easier would be to use a thicker yarn and a larger crochet hook, and this reduces fine motor precision required and is easier to see and manipulate the stitches. This would help maintain comfort and continue tasks for a longer period of time. And then grading and adapting up would be to choose a more complex stitch pattern, which would require more sequence and problem solving skills, which would make it harder. I experienced improved occupational performance in a leisure activity that is meaningful to me. I became more efficient and confident in following patterns as well as managing materials and completing the projects. This increased independence and competence has allowed me to engage more fully and with greater satisfaction. So I made a hat, 2 granny squares, a chicken, and then 2 coasters. So it went my granny squares first, coasters next, the hat, and then the chicken to increase the difficulty. The hat was probably the easiest one, but it did take the longest. My evidence-based practice I chose was the effects of craft-based interventions on mental health and well-being. This excuse me, measure both quantitative and qualitative data. For quantitative, it was measuring outcomes such as stress levels, anxiety scores, and mood ratings using validated scales. And then qualitative was use participants' personal experiences and perceptions, and that used interviews as well as questionnaires. And then a brief summary would be that this explored the impact of craft-based interventions such as crocheting on mental health and well-being. The results show that these activities can reduce stress, improve mood, and promote emotional regulation. The review supports that the use of crafts as meaningful it supports the use of crafts as meaningful and therapeutic occupations within the OT practice. And then these are my references. Thank you.